So the first exercise is a sandbag to box. The movement looks like this. So essentially you're gonna stand over the sandbag. If you're too far away from it, when you lift it, the weight's gonna want to move forward, which is gonna drag you forward, and the leverages won't be ideal, and at the very least it'll make the movement very hard to do. More often than not, you just can't do it if the weight's reasonable. So you stand over it, get one hand underneath, shift the bag around to get a couple of fingers, then tighten up the back. If you don't tighten up the back, you're going to start the movement with your legs, and that looks like this, and that's not a strong position to be in. So start with the back. So you start with pulling it forward, and then you use the legs, and then you use them both together to kind of uh, explode, pull the weight into you with in sort of an explosive movement. So it looks like this. You're going to then rest it on your knees and then try to pull the bag into you, then hip thrust the bag and just kind of put it on the box. If you're not used to the movement, some of the things that will happen initially is might look like this where the weight's really ahead and then you try to do something like that. In all those cases, in my opinion, just bail on the lift. I've found that it's better to try to get those little things right rather than force a bad rep. Uh, a lot of this is getting good at the mechanics of it rather than uh, being too weak. But yeah, on to the next thing. Here's a couple more reps with of the sandbag to elevated surface, but with a 200-pound sandbag. So not every rep looked exactly the same. At the last one, there was a little bit of compensation, but if you noticed, I just kind of recuperated, brought the sandbag close to me, and then went about the movement. Before moving, before moving on to the next exercise, with the sandbag to elevated surface, I like to stay in a rep range of around 3 to 8, depending on the weight that I'm using. Occasionally, I'll do a lot more reps than that, but with that, I'm going for pure endurance, just going to max out. Rarely ever am I going to do any sandbag movement to failure. I just kind of have an overall volume in mind and I try to hit that and I split it up into sets and reps accordingly. The next exercise is sandbag box squats. So pretty much the same setup as the previous exercise. But the sandbag will start on top of the elevated surface, and yeah, looks like this. Yeah, you can choose to have it either. I guess you can call this parallel, and or you can have it perpendicular. It's essentially just going to be like a wide grip or narrow grip, and the way you hold it is going to recruit the muscles of the back slightly differently, depending on your strengths and weaknesses. One might be stronger or weaker than the other. Anyway, the box squat looks like this. So, essentially, going to get my hands around the sandbag, sort of a bear hug grip, slowly slide it off the surface, get it really snug into my body, get my arms really tight around it, and I'm holding the bag into my body, sitting onto the box. So I usually like to do this thing where I take my legs off the floor, kind of rock back a little, then forward squat. The weight being ahead or in front of you forces the core to stay activated, and overall your legs, I mean, it's a squat, so your legs are activated, and yeah, just it feels very challenging. There's something about having to hold the sandbag up and it not being a barbell. It still shifts around ever so slightly, even though it's a pretty straightforward movement. And so your core has to be engaged the whole time. Your arms have to be clasped the whole time. Otherwise, the weight will shift and then the movement gets harder. On to the next one.
The audio for this got messed up, so doing a voiceover. So essentially for this, I'm wrapping my hands around the sandbag. I can choose to do a seatbelt grip or do like hands intertwined, and that's essentially what I'm doing in the video. The act of bear hugging and walking with the sandbag requires the whole posterior chain to be activated and stay active throughout the movement. This translates really well into any other movement that requires front loading, like a front squat, and any other like sandbag to shoulder or anything like that. Really good for building endurance, strength, and muscle in the posterior chain.
So, on to the next one. So, this exercise is something that I've on to the next one. This is an exercise that I've liked doing quite a bit. It's a sandbag oblique twist. First, I'll show you what it looks like, and then I'll kind of go over some of the things about it. So I roll the sandbag onto my chest. Well, not exactly my chest, kind of like on the stomach, and then onto the like half stomach, half chest. Then wrap my hands around again and the crisscross. Now, if your arms aren't long enough, you might just have to hold it on the side. But if your arms are long enough, then you can reach around and get them interlocked. Then I do a hip thrust up, which shifts the bag a little bit higher. And then in this position, I rotate to one side, just the upper part of my body. So you'll notice in this position, like my obliques and my lats on one side are completely stretched. And then back to center, then onto the other side. So it's a combination of lats and the obliques primarily, and then the whole time the glutes are engaged. Lots of rotational strength required for this movement. It's with the 150, I'm usually able to do about 5 to 10 reps. I'm not really trying to push it to failure. I want to get good, proper reps. As you get more tired, your like your weakest link kind of gets compromised, and then your body starts compensating. And then as you keep compensating, you develop imbalances. So it's better to do perfect reps and optimize the biomechanics and really make sure you're feeling all the muscles. Uh, this movement, if you're like a grappler or something, will translate really well into, I guess, rotating, like throwing around your opponent while they're on the floor. Um, yeah, so sandbag oblique twists. This next exercise is in the same class, I guess, as the bear hug carry. So you're going to essentially get in the same position and then do step ups alternated. So that looks like this. So getting up with it, and one leg up, down, other leg up, down. The fact that you have to step up as opposed to walking straight is its own different kind of challenge and forces the muscles in the body to be recruited differently. It's it can be made more difficult in one of two ways. You can either go heavier or you can raise the height of the box itself, increasing or decreasing the range of motion and forcing the muscles to work differently. With both the bear hug carry and this exercise, including one I'll show in a bit, or just pretty much any sandbag exercise, you can choose to go uh, through the middle, which is by through the middle I mean like around, or you can choose to hold it at the ends of the sandbag. This will obviously change with heavier sandbags because the super heavy sandbags are really wide, and so if you can't get your arms around it, then you can't get your arms around it. But with a lot of the intermediate level sandbags, you are able to grab it at the ends, and it's the way to think about it is the difference between a regular narrow grip deadlift or a shoulder width deadlift or a snatch grip deadlift. So let's say I did the same movement with, I guess, a wide grip. I would I would hold it around. So as you can see, I'm not getting my arms around, and then do the same movement. But yeah, on to the next. For the next exercise, using an elevated surface again, but this time I'll be sitting on it. It has to be something like this where you can, uh, I guess, keep your legs on either side. Sometimes if the box is big, you're not able to get your feet on either side. I kind of prefer this way of having it. And then Like I mentioned earlier, I'm going to have my arms around the wider part, or even like going over like this. And I'm going to squat, but w- without like activating my back. Then I'm going to hinge. So I'm going to separate the squat and the hinge. And as I'm hinging, I'm going to do a high pull. So all of that looks like this. So doing a squat, then high pull, and then back down. So again, squat. So I'm like walking, kind of like hunching my back, activating just the leg. So it kind of trains the explosiveness and like it's almost like a high row. So essentially, what's that training is? It's like a back extension. So it uh, activates the erector spinae, the lats, the traps, the rhomboids, pretty much the entire posterior chain. It gets the shoulders involved. Then, obviously, getting up requires the legs. So it trains that explosiveness that's required to do things like sandbag over shoulder or throwing the sandbag over shoulder. If you're trying to, like, let's say you can get a 200-pound sandbag to shoulder, and you're trying to work on getting a 250 to shoulder, one of the ways you can condition your body to get good at exploding the sandbag into the shoulder is by doing this move. At least that's what I did, and it seemed to translate really well into the sandbag to shoulder movement. The reason I say sandbag to shoulder is in the sandbag world, the thing that most people seem to consider having conquered the weight is when you're able to get it to your shoulder. But yeah, uh, one of the downsides of a sandbag is that you can't really use it for too many pressing movements. However, you can do a floor press, and since pressing is an important movement to train, I consider floor presses with a sandbag to be a good movement. So, so to do a floor press, you want the sandbag on you, and I prefer it to be horizontal. Then I just kind of roll it to my chest area, kind of like maneuver it into a position where I can press it. Press. Oh, it's not a movement that I'm particularly strong at, but and today I'm kind of tired anyway. But yeah, I usually do anywhere from like 6 to 10 reps with the 150. Uh, yeah, the fact that it's a sandbag forces your hands to be in an open position, and there aren't really any open hand presses, so that's kind of a good thing. And then also, you have to make sure that you're evenly pressing, otherwise, the weight in the sandbag shifts, which will make the movement harder than it already is. The next exercise is sandbag to shoulder. I'm going to show a couple reps with the 150, then I'm going to move to the 200. There are some intricacies that show up when the weight gets heavier, and that those need to be shown on separate bags. I also will make a dedicated video uh, going over, going over everything that, um, like just going into very deep in detail into getting a sandbag to the shoulder. But that's not for right now. So with the 150-pound sandbag, similar to sandbag to elevated surface, you're going to get your feet on either side, and then you're going to kind of shift the weight around to kind of get the weight centered in the bag. Then getting my fingers underneath, and then going to row and deadlift at the same time explosively. Rewrap my hands around the sandbag, straighten it out, get it to a position where I can hip thrust it. So it needs to be really close and tight to the hips. And then I'm going to pick a shoulder and then complete the movement. I'm going to do it again on the other side. So that's what it looks like with the 150. Moving on to the 200 on bag. So I've gotten to a point where I'm strong enough to go directly to my shoulder with the 200. But for the sake of this explanation, I'm going to slow things down and try not to explode directly to the shoulder. So if you're like, usually with a sandbag that's really heavy and that you can get directly to your shoulder with a hip thrust, you're going to have to maneuver it up, and that looks like this. First, I'm going to do it as I explain it. So everything in the beginning stays the same. Shifting the bag around, row and deadlift at the same time and explode. I bring my legs closer, giving it a proper shelf to sit on. Then I'll straighten up and then use that explosion to get it as high as possible. But see, it's like stuck here. So now I'll like jump, try to get one hand underneath, and then push it up. So essentially what I'm doing there is these slight bump movements that slowly shift the sandbag slightly higher, and then each time I'm kind of trying to get like one hand lower and one hand high. So if I'm going to the left shoulder, the left hand is high, and I push the bottom and then and pull with the top, kind of like flipping it, and then get it to rest on my shoulder. I'll do it again on the right side. So wrap, legs close. This time, left hand's going to be lower, right hand's going to be higher. Get up, shift. The movement may not look exactly the same for everybody. There's definitely slight variations you can do depending on what your body is like and what you feel strong at. But that's the general idea. You're going to keep the bag close to you and slowly shift. get it to the shoulder. For the final exercise, it's going to be sandbag over the shoulder throw. So once you're able to get a sandbag to the shoulder, over time you're going to get strong enough to where you can just launch the bag over your shoulder. Though there are slight differences between getting a heavy bag to shoulder and throw, and I'm going to point them out here. So when you do a sandbag to shoulder, you're picking it up and then you're gradually maneuvering it to your shoulder. With a sandbag over the shoulder throw, you're literally going to make use of the hip explosion to then throw it over the shoulder. So it looks like this. I'm gonna do it from a side angle so it makes sense. A couple of pointers over here. So when I'm gonna actually, I'll do the movement, then I'll go over the pointers. So it looks like this. Using the 150 bag, so when I do this movement, I row. So like the initial part where I'm exploding it, I have to catch the sandbag. As I'm catching the sandbag, I'm also contracting my abs, which looks like this. So when you contract your abs and just let go, your body is going to want to rebound back into the straight position. You're going to make use of that rebound, essentially elasticity. So it's an explosive movement. If you try to raw strength throw it, it's possible, but you're not utilizing the biomechanics properly. The goal of this is to make it a very bouncy, very explosive movement. Think of almost like a clean and jerk sort of situation, where when you clean a barbell, you're catching it in a squat and using that rebound at the bottom to squat it up and then jerk it into overhead position. With sandbag to over the shoulder throw, you're essentially going to catch it in that semi half squat, like a half squat position, and then use a rebound effect from your core along with arm strength to launch it over your shoulder. I'm going to show the movement once again. So yeah, those are what I think are the best sandbag exercises. Really good for building strength and muscle. Yeah, that's all for this video. Catch you all in the next one.